You have some things you're ready to
Yeah,
say in the intro?
yeah,
Okay, cool.
yes. I have things to say.
Good. Yeah, hi, I'm Morgan here with Arna, part of Creative Leaders Unplugged, and today we're talking to Anderson Silva. He's, yeah, Brazilian designer, a gamer, a bold leader, an anthropologist, a researcher,
Yeah, many things.
a builder.
So we talk to so many different people,
Hmm.
and they are obviously all kind of from the world of creativity, design, innovation. They're all connected to that, obviously. So maybe not the most diverse group of people if you think about it that way, but at the same time, they are quite diverse.
Hmm.
He is no, he's into design leadership. He's a design leader, not what we would call, we talk about creative leadership. I'm not going to talk about the differences, but it's his shtick, basically. Design
Yeah,
leadership. That's his
yeah.
thing, right? And when we started talking, he mentioned that he loved spreadsheets. For instance,
That's one
and
of the first things he says. Yeah.
yeah, I think we both went like, oh,
This is
what?
new.
What? You said you love spreadsheets? Are we, is this the right, are we, did we dial a wrong number? Hello? But actually, it turns out to be like, oh, yeah, I got it.
It makes a lot of sense.
Because he came from, he's a maker, and for him, coding and automating things, that's part of his design kind of language, right? So
Hmm.
for him, he can play with that. He can imagine, using that for certain different things. And so it's part of his creativity, which is, to me, so that was kind of different in a way. And then but then in the end, again, we talked to someone, he also is someone who is interested, he talked about this game persona
Yeah,
being
like
a
like a gamer profile. Like
gamer
what type
profile,
of
sorry,
gamer is he? Yeah.
yeah, gamer profile, which I didn't know that existed.
Mhm.
And yeah, explorer. He's
Yeah.
an explorer, and so again, we were in the same kind of, yeah, we had the same conversation around someone who has a broad interest in many things, an explorer, and tries to kind of is interested in so many things and tries so many different things. And again, what we've seen so many times in these interviews, these innovators, these change makers, these creatives, these creative leaders are people who you don't just are not interested in just one little thing or one specific.
Hmm.
They're not those kind of experts. They are experts in connecting, it's a cliche, but
Yes.
connecting the dots, right? That cliche, but it's true. You can see it again. It's
Big
like, okay,
time.
right?
Big time. And after the conversation, I was kind of trying to sum up, okay, what's like the essence that I got from this, this hour conversation? And he's really someone who's, of course, interested in a lot of things, but then can oscillate and surf between them. And so I almost like imagine this superhero who can surf the waves of management, but then also surf the waves of leadership, but can surf the waves of chaos and then can surf the waves of order and kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
But being the sort
yeah.
of, creating these intersections, right? So we talked
Yes.
about that. I really love that story of the flower um,
Yes.
being presented as a flower, but then with all the leaves in different boxes, and saying, so here's the flower, but then obviously the flower dies. It doesn't live that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was a wonderful kind of visual
Yeah.
he created.
And he shared a quote from one of his professors from university, and his professor said, "Design is looking systemically at a problem. If you bring in a particular profession or niche, they might just look at one angle of a problem, but then design has to capture the whole picture." And that's something that he did very well.
Yeah, which links to, the need for people to be able to take different positions, knowing more languages, knowing more worlds.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's something we keep hearing from the people that we talk to in this podcast, people who are able to, have a different perspective, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
perception, a different way of, or different, even, someone in one of the podcasts talked about we live in different worlds, even. But being
Yeah.
able to connect those and being able to see through these, whatever, different lenses or whatever. But that is something which you don't get when you just go through school.
Hmm.
You just go through the normal way of, life and schooling. And so, for instance, Anderson, he did two studies at the same time, for instance,
Yeah.
one during the day and one during the night, or like, you know, out of necessity, out of the need to really work so hard to get out of the situation that he was in, or at least the feeling that he needed to work really hard because otherwise he wouldn't make it for whatever reason. But there's something with these people that have a specific drive and a
Hmm.
curiosity to
Yes. Yeah.
know all these different things, and not just the one. So he's interested in design, obviously, but then, you know, and then many other things, like even the gaming thing where you go like, yeah, when you were a kid, you were into gaming. Yeah, like
A lot of
every
kids.
a lot of kids, right? But that, but
But
he
he really
connects that.
did something with it. Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was really, and he talked to the conversation kind of starts out about video games and he talks about this, that he's kind of an explorer of games. He's not so driven to necessarily finish a game, but more explore and understand how it works. And you can also see that in how he thinks about not only leadership, but then also thinks about design and how he thinks about
Mm,
spreadsheets.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know a lot about games. I didn't know that. That was
Yeah,
new
I'm a
to me too. I
nerd.
discovered something in the podcast about you as well. I was like, what are you talking about? You were like into games?
Yes, very much.
Oh,
I'm
you're a nerd.
I'm a big nerd. I hide it well, but that is my true form.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. I didn't know that.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think yeah, I don't know. I've always liked puzzles and stuff, so of course there's that element. But I also think, having two brothers and growing up in the 90s
Mm,
also plays a part of that culturally. So, but even beyond that, yeah, I think it's the puzzle element for me, trying to solve things and yeah.
right. Cool. Well, so if you want to know a little bit more about Anderson and Morgan, uh, listen to the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I really
Enjoy.
enjoyed. Yeah,
Yeah,
be
me too.
inspired. And yes, design your own spreadsheets, design your own games. It's possible.
I would say that I'm a very bold leader with a different background, different perspective because of that. And I'm very rational in a way of looking all the time for the ROI of things. And this is tricky in a creative world when you want to do crazy things. I also have a background in startups and fintechs and all these things. So all the KPIs are in my mind. So I'm also very, I would say also addicted to spreadsheets.
That's a first.
The
I've never
true
heard.
trait of a creative leader.
Yeah, I do Google Sheets for relaxing time. Yeah, sure. And I have a website that sells Google Sheets, so Google Sheet templates. So
Oh,
I like
Nice.
a lot. I like a lot to play with these. It's a way of programming, actually.
Yeah. Have you always been like this? Like even as a child?
I think my father is an engineer, mechanical engineer. So
Okay.
I was also always trying to understand how things work, how to automate things, how to build things in the workshops. So when I got to design, I learned a lot more about craft. So yeah, I think since I know myself, like
Yeah.
oh,
Always
wow.
building stuff.
yeah,
That's amazing. Where did you grow up?
I've grown in Brazil. Yeah, I was born in Brazil. Yeah, it's not an easy story because Brazil, I can look back now and see that Brazil is a very hard funnel of selection.
Hmm.
To be someone leading design in Europe, in Netherlands, in a relevant company like Ball,
Yeah.
is a very narrow funnel, I would say. So I was born in Rio de Janeiro. It's a very famous city
Mhm.
in a poor neighbor. My father was the first person in generations that could graduate, and I was the second one. So I had some opportunities, but not many privileges during my life. So learning English and going to university. I also graduated in two universities, public universities,
Mhm.
at the same time. So one at night, one in the morning,
Wow.
working in the afternoon. So I work hard, yeah, I can say. And both in design. So I was aware that I want to be a designer since I was a kid. Like when I was 12, it
Really?
was already,
You
yeah.
knew what you wanted to be a designer.
Yeah, when I was 12, I was already studying 3D Studio Max and Flash and Photoshop and all
Ah.
Oh,
these things
cool. Yeah.
myself. So I got my first book about design was a 3D Studio Max book. Then later I studied like Donald Norman, all those things I read very before joining the university. Yeah. Yeah. I in Brazil you have to be creative to survive. So
Mhm.
I was used to go to libraries and just read there what I can. So it was a habit that my father taught me, like to take these opportunities. And fortunately, he succeeded a lot as an engineer in the oil industry. And then he could give us more opportunities. And then we went out of the neighborhood to a better one, and better one, and better one. So me and my brother, we had the opportunity. But until now, I have family there. They are in the same situation. I help all them. I help my grandma, my cousin, my everybody. Yeah. But it gave me a different perspective about life, about world, about what is valuable and how fortunate we are. That's the main point.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you, as a kid already, I mean, when you were interested in design and you started reading books on design, I mean, I mean, were you, I mean, it's kind of, because to me, when I was that age, I think I wanted to be maybe, I don't know, fireman, something like that, which I clearly am not. So it's so interesting that you already kind of have this sort of this pathway kind of figured
Yeah.
out, like this is where I'm going to be. But do
Yeah.
you know when that started? When, I mean,
Yeah.
because it's a long time ago, but design itself, because it's kind of abstract for
I know.
kids, right?
I know
Because if I,
exactly the day. The
yeah,
day.
let's tell us.
Yeah. When my first computer we got when I was 7 years old, so 93.
Mm,
And we got this computer because my father was working in the industry, and they had a program to sell the old computers from the industry to the employees, so they can give this to their kids, and then change. And then my father paid something like a price of a car in this computer in many
Yeah.
installments, like,
oh wow.
and then a computer arrived in my home. Yeah. So there we started using DOS and Visual Basic and all this stuff that you had to practically code. There was
Yeah.
no mouse or keyboard.
Uh-huh.
Keyboard there was, but not as we have. Like there was no CD-ROM, sound blaster, like sound speakers, nothing. And then obviously we went to gaming into this PC, like playing Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem, all these games on that ages. And then I remember that I was used to draw a lot. I draw all my figures, like the toys, all those things since I
Mhm.
was a kid. And then I started drawing Doom interface. Like,
Ooh.
hey, I don't like the guy here because it takes my attention. And then I have maybe my mother have these drawings yet, like redrawing the way the game works. And then at that time, I said to my father, hey, I want to be a concept artist for games. So then I started studying anatomy and concepting and all these things. But in the end, I turned it to be usability because I hate bureaucracy. And then I said, yes, it's disturbing to have a world so bureaucratical. So let's work in making things easy to use. And then I went to this path. But before I studied animation, 3D, all for games, I still play games. And yes, One day I will do a game myself. I don't know. One day I will take a sabbatical to make a game and get back. I don't know that.
Really cool. Yeah.
Do you know what kind of game it's going to be?
Yeah, I play many indie games, like independent producer games,
Hmm.
especially turn-based RPGs. There is one that I'm very fan of. The name is Stone Shard. It's a game made by three Ukrainians, and they started the game before the war. They had to stop the game because of the war.
Hmm.
It's in beta, but it's an awesome game. Like
Oh,
a very
cool.
simple pixel art, but very well thought, like very good. So I would do something in this way, like a turn-based game. Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool. I've looked into like the mechanics behind designing a game. And when you're playing it, you get so in the flow. Like that's all your world is playing
Yeah.
that game. And so you don't, I didn't understand all of the mechanics and how complicated it is
Yeah.
just to design a game. Because at some point, I was like, oh, this looks fun. Let me dive into this. And I realized just how elaborate it can be. It's really impressive then when people can do it well.
Yeah, I learned a little bit about programming also. So in
Mhm.
Unity. So behind the scenes of the games are very complex, many variables, parameters. So it's
Yeah,
we see the interface and yeah, but behind the scenes are many calculations happening. So
exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
funny how different generations grow up with games. So when I know I got my first computer in a similar way, like yours, with my father
Mhm.
getting a computer from work and then being able to buy one from home for home. But this is a bit earlier. It's in the 80s. So I had a Commodore
mhm.
computer
Yeah,
with a little tape deck. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
and so you had to kind of, put the tape in and then you could play these games. Like there was a game, sort of the Olympics,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it
You
was a
played on the
game.
TV, right?
Yeah, 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 on the TV. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So we would kind of, yeah, and we had a little joystick but to be honest, so now my son, he's 13, and he has a game computer, and so my wife did not grow up playing games. And so
hmm
we have this interesting discussion always, like, because she goes like, he's been playing this game for half an hour, so he should stop. And my mind goes back to the time when I was playing games alone or with my friends,
yeah,
and and listening to music. To me, it was the sort of I know exactly which records I was playing. I know
mhm,
exactly which one I was playing. I was listening to this music. If I hear it, I get into the game again. And I was
yeah,
playing this game, and sometimes with my friends or alone, and it was really, really great time. I was really
mhm,
happy. So I
yeah,
go like, oh, you can, you let him play for a little
yeah,
more because I know how much because you get all this. And nowadays, he has his headphone and he has his friends who are also in the game. So I'm actually a little bit jealous
yeah,
because so I play again, every now and then I play with him but I know it's also addictive because somehow
yeah,
you're like, oh, there's this it's this world you can get yourself completely immersed in. And I have to think about this story. I was just the other day there was a story somewhere I read it. It was in the news, I think. This kid that lived this complete life in this game. He had a secret
mhm,
life. He was completely a different character and
mhm,
in this whole world of this game. And it's such a it can really suck you in. So
mhm,
that's the only thing where with my son, I go like, okay, there's a moment, when like after a few hours, I
yeah,
go like, this, you're a father now. You have to, no, you're a dad. You're a dad. You're a dad. Wait, hang on, hang on. This is not good. You should go out and play. The sun is shining. So I hear myself saying these typical
yeah,
dad things like, go outside. The sun, the weather's great. And I know that as a kid, I was like, I don't care if the sun
yeah.
shines, especially if you're in Brazil, by the way, because I think the sun where you grew up, the sun was always shining, probably.
Yeah,
So,
most of the time.
yeah, but I like
But my
this.
mother used to say the same thing, like go outside, there is a
Yeah,
sun there.
right.
I don't know. I think the second thing I did a lot was playing, yeah, playing games. So if you sum the hours, probably 20,000 hours of playing during my life. And the point is, I never got addicted to a game like to play until the end many times and complete everything. My game profiler is more explorer. So I play many games because I want to understand how they work, actually.
Yeah.
Today I have a Steam account with hundreds of games. If you ask me which one you went to the end, 10, I don't know. But most of them I open, I check, and when I understood, oh, it's boring.
Oh, I think we are alike. I have that too. I don't want to. I'm not really. First of all, yeah. So it's either boring or it's too difficult.
Yeah.
So okay, really, that's I have to solve all these puzzles.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, I get it. Next game. So yeah, that's true. Oh, that's really fascinating. So there's a game profile. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
in the game theory, there are four profiles: the hacker, the achiever, the social, and the explorer. The hacker is trying to break the game all the time, find shortcuts, hack it. The explorer is trying to open the map. The black parts of the map can't be there,
Yeah.
The black overlay. The social just want to interact, want to buy new clothes, buy status and rankings, all the things. And the achiever wants to complete all the tasks. So there's a
I'm definitely
theory behind these.
Yeah, I'm definitely the explorer then.
Yeah.
I also grew up with a computer from my dad from his work.
Yeah.
But then
it worked, like all these actions
look
generated
at us now.
professional.
Yes, yeah. But there used to be a website called Congregate, and it was a website where people could design their own Flash games, and then you could upload them. So you had people like professionals uploading their games, but then you also had kids in their free time designing stuff. And it was this really kind of flat hierarchy of, okay, everyone just puts their games here and you can play them. And as Flash has kind of disappeared, the site's kind of, but the amount of time I have spent on this website is insane. But that was definitely the explorer, trying all the different types and
Yeah, I would say that I spent a lot of time and money in the Kickstarter. So I sponsored some games and 2 years later, a box arrived in my home. It was a board that I forgot I bought 2 years ago.
That's cool. A gift from your past self.
So if your game profile is Explorer, is that something that profile, does that also fit with the other things, in your life? Are you an explorer, outside of the games?
Good question.
Yeah, I think in my personal life, I have played many sports, let's do padel, and now let's play football, and now let's try, I don't know, volleyball, and then running, and then, so I would say that I have equipment for every sport, because I explored all of them. And I got enthusiastic, and then I'm bored of it. Yeah. But not in every aspect. I would say that some things are very consistent that I went really deep into, and design is one of them that I can say that I studied design a lot, like many books. I don't know how many hours in university. I don't know how many hours in startup. So yeah, this is something that I was talking with the CPO of the company and said, yes, it's impossible to me to take design out for a moment, from my mind. So if you give me any problem, if you throw me in the woods and say survive, I will apply design to that.
So okay. So let's look into that analogy. So how would you apply design to that? So you're in this
woods.
You're in the woods. So what does that mean for you? How would your mind then start working?
Yeah, I think the first thing would be prioritize necessities. Okay, I have to drink water. I will have to have food. What resources I have? Do I know where I am? How can I figure out how to find a path? How to breadcrumb the path I walked? So everything comes to my mind like design, right? Can I prototype some tools? How to sleep better? How to protect myself? All these things, and I think the craft also would help,
yes,
how to stereotype stuff and get resources and make things. Things that you do in the university, like product design, real stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
would
And
help.
is that what you, because you specialize or you use UX quite a bit in the experience from the games, but then did you also study product design as well when you were in university?
Yeah, I studied industrial design, which is broad,
Mm-hmm.
and I studied graphic arts, which is more focused
Okay.
on editorial and printing
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
So graphic arts was at night, and industrial design was in the morning.
Really
So
cool.
industrial design was covering a little broad, like designing cars, designing websites, designing
Yeah.
brands, designing packages, all these things. And at night, it was all about printing process, like silk screen and offset and photography and yeah, all the printing methods, I would
Now,
say.
now all I can think of in my mind is like a wilderness survival show where they have like a team of graphic designers in the wilderness and a team of industrial designers in the wilderness. And I think I know what team I would vote for.
Yeah, I will go with the makers. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
real stuff makers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. That'll be a nice experiment. Let's see who survives. That'd be a
It's
good
a good
show.
reality show.
Yeah.
For engineer team versus PMs, and yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's true though that if you know how to make things, and to be honest, I cannot make anything. To be honest, I have no clue. I sometimes I think about that. What would happen if I get like zapped into, I don't know, the Middle Ages or something like 200 years from go.
Mhm.
Because you're like, I'll be like a wizard because I know all these technologies, and I go like, I know. I know nothing. I don't know how to make fire. I don't know how phones work. I don't know how cars work. I don't know how the things work. So, I live in an age where for me, when my kids ask me questions about how does it actually work? How does my phone, how can I make a call? And they're like, I have no clue. I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know. It goes through the air, does it? You're
yeah,
like, that goes through the air? Yes. It's like this invisible thing. And I no, I don't know.
yeah.
Don't
I think
I,
know.
we are losing these abilities through generations, right? Like
yeah.
Yes.
my grandfather built his own house.
Hmm.
My father didn't build his own house, but he hired a company to build the house, and he installed some things. And I just bought my house, like ready. And these days, I was very proud that I installed a electric fence in my house, like the
Mhm.
with the arm that opens and closes.
Yeah.
It took 2 months to figure out,
Yeah.
but something that a professional would do in 2 hours. I don't know. But I like to explore these things. Like I have a small boat that I have to fix it all the time. So this is also a challenge.
Yeah.
And then you YouTube everything, and you find a guy with the same engine, and yeah, you
That
try.
is true though. That's for this generation, that is true. So if I have, so if you have a question, we're living in this time where there's always answers.
Mhm.
Either no, and now obviously with AI, it's even getting stranger
Yeah.
and more extreme in that sense, because you can ask chat GPT anything, and it goes like, that's a great question, Arne.
Mhm.
Here's an answer. And so there's always answer. But YouTube as well, so also with my kids, for instance, but also me. So I have a small boat as well, and at one point I couldn't get the engine to work, and I didn't know why. And so basically, I look up on YouTube, and there's this person
Yeah.
with the same thing in the engine, and it was like, oh, just very little,
Yeah.
was just a tiny little problem. But I could just ask someone, basically, right?
Yeah.
But it does two things. One is that you go online and you look on YouTube, or nowadays I can use ChatGPT, for instance, to just any basic questions. It's really interesting. But back then, you might have to ask a neighbor,
Mhm.
or you go
Mhm.
to find someone, a friend, or someone who knows someone, and you go call them, or you go visit them, or you go ask them, or involve them in it. Can you help me? You don't have
Yeah.
to do that anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure if that's a big thing, but I think we're losing something. We're gaining something. We're losing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember in the early games there were some magazines that you buy to know the cheat codes of the games, and it was like expensive in my
Yeah.
case. and you have to check like, oh, the Zelda thing, how to
Yeah.
do. And before that, there was no instruction or tutorial or onboarding on games. Like you just turn on the games, you play all the buttons and see what happened. So
Yeah.
that was the basic. Like you jump, yeah, here I go forward, here I
Oh,
go
yeah.
back, and then you figure out by doing. There was no like, oh, you are level 1, let's do a first quest. No, no, you go hard mode already, and that's the game.
Yeah.
If you fail, you start again, and that's it. And if you play on fliperamas, like the big ones, like the
Uh-huh.
boxes, you lose money by learning. Like, there's no tutorial, and you
Yeah.
just lost a coin. Oh, you're dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah. That's so
Like it
interesting. Yeah.
was merciless, right? The
yeah.
developers were merciless about the user. Like you, we were raised in this scenario. Like we don't care about it. And now they are almost babysitting the user, right? Oh, come on. And then
It's
you feel,
yeah.
then now, oh, you unlocked a new weapon. Let's learn how to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember hearing at school because we never had video. Well, we had the computer, and so we had the video games there, but we never had game consoles. And finally, our neighbors who had too much money, they felt bad that we didn't have a game console. So they gave us their old Nintendo 64.
Wow.
And so, and it came with all the games and everything. But this is old news to everybody else, right? They've had N64 for years. But for me and my brothers, this was the big deal, right? These new things, we're figuring it all out. And then we would hear through other people at school, oh, yeah, his older brother figured out how to hack this level. Or, oh, yeah, we know how to do that. And so you really had to like talk to people. And I think there's also some beauty in that we're kind of losing today.
Yeah. I
I
remember
heard
there was a phase in Top Gun. It was a game of flying, right?
Mhm.
And then there was a phase there that you have to how can I say to
Like the
put the
altitude.
plane. No, put the plane in the ground. I don't know
Oh, yeah, landing. Yeah.
to land. Yeah, to land. And then me and my brother, we tried so many times, like all the life, and we always crash. And in the end, years later, we figured it out. It was a video intro. It wasn't a phase. It was a video that we didn't control. Like, there was no way
I
to
had
win.
those experiences.
It
Yeah.
was part of the
Yeah.
story. Like nobody told us, and we were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, move to the left,
Yeah.
move to the right." And
Oh,
it was just
Yeah.
a
I
video.
had that. I had those. I actually, yeah. So you think you're playing, but it's actually a video. Am I controlling this? Like, I think I am. I think I am. No, no, it's a video. But to that, so there's a story about. I was listening to an interview with there was an old interview with the Beatles, and they talked about how just there was a guy somewhere who knew this chord, this guitar chord, and that they didn't know. So they took the bus and went to this person because he could show them this guitar chord, right?
yeah.
There's something,
And then 30 seconds, playing. And then,
yeah, yeah. You're like, oh,
go
that's it.
home.
Yeah, but it was a big deal for them, and that was the only way to find out. Right,
Yeah,
you had to go there. You had to go and meet these people. They couldn't show you because there was no
Yeah.
there was no Zoom, or there was no no video conferencing. So we're winning something because things can go faster. So you don't have to take the bus. You don't have to travel half a day to get to know that chord. Basically, it's within what, like the second, not even a second. You can have
Yeah.
all the chords
Mhm.
ever played. So there's too much information. You're like,
Yeah.
so much information that you go like, there are millions of chords. You go like, how is that possible? There's just 6 strings on a guitar. How can it be so many chords? And,
A
so,
lack of patience, right? Like
yeah,
I remember I was watching this YouTube movie, YouTube video to fix the engine, and I fast forward
yes,
putting
exactly. Shut up at the intro. Yes,
twice, like,
yeah,
and then once I figured out, hey, I'm trying to fix an engine. It's not like let's watch calmly, okay?
yeah.
It's half
No,
an hour, half
we
an
all do
hour,
it. Yeah, we all
half
do
an
it.
hour.
Yeah.
And then we do mode screens, and then I was watching the YouTube and then watching TV at the same time and checking
Yeah.
my phone, and
Yes.
so
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
information, lack of patience.
Two screens going like, okay, this is like, what's happening here? It's like,
Yeah,
oh, what did Trump do? Ah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I definitely think they're connected too. The fact that we're getting so many different inputs and our inability to focus
Yeah.
solely on something is definitely got to be connected
Yeah.
some.
So there's something there because obviously, you in the work you do now, that this is all really relevant, right? Because the way
Yeah.
people experience, the services and the products and the interaction with the company you work at now. I mean, there's so much changing, right? The way, I mean, just a couple of years ago, things were different than now. I mean, it changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
And so, in a way, it's interesting the way you started. Actually, when we started talking, you said something. You're a bold leader. You're confronted with, you're always with ROIs in your head, and you can get confronted with KPIs. But at the same time, you're also into startups, and you're a creative person, and you like to experiment and try stuff out. And so somehow there's some tension between the two, right? So and one, you're an explorer, but you're also, in love with Excel sheets. In my brain, is like, that's impossible. That doesn't work. How is it? But I get it now a little bit because that's like coding, like you said.
Yeah.
So because you're experiencing that in such a different way than for me. For me, it's like this overly structured way of working, and I
Mm.
can't deal with Excel sheets at all. If someone sends me an Excel sheet, I go like, so all my creativity is gone. But you have a different take on that, which is really interesting. But so can you talk a little bit about how all that kind of fits together with what you're doing right now? This is
Yeah.
explorer and this new world and technology is changing and
Yeah. I think creativity gets empowered when you get more reference from different angles. So I remember when I was in the university, there was a professor called Sawada. He was a Japanese guy, and he said once, "Don't let the university block your studies. Like don't let your university lock it." And then he was explaining that, hey, you study in a public university, you can enroll to any discipline, like any philosophy, anatomy, programming. So it was free to apply. So we had to fill the credits, all these things. But he said, yes, everybody wants to leave the university in 5 years, but they have 8 years as a citizen right to learn. Why don't you stay 8 years? Because yeah, you can. It's just free. And then he said, yes, this professor, to have 1 hour of consultancy with him is $10,000. So, and you have free classes with this person,
mm,
like, why don't you use these things? And then it triggered me a lot. I was doing two universities at the same time. And then in 5 years, I finished all the disciplines. And then I said, okay, I don't want to close. I will start doing other things. And then I did economics, anthropology, programming, many things,
Really cool.
sociology. So these expand the angles. And now as a leader, I see that the more common ground I have with other people, the easier it is to communicate. Because communicate is, you have to have something common to communicate, right? So if you don't have an intersection, there's no communication.
Yeah.
And language is one intersection, but content is also intersection, right? And then I would say that it's much easier to negotiate with developers because I've developed it before. I did algorithms. I worked as a programmer for a year. So all these things helps me understand and talk to them in the same language. The same thing with economics and KPIs and product managers and C-levels, all these things. And with researchers, because I studied anthropology. So it's, in the end, it all connects, because if you are open to explore new disciplines, you have more common grounds, then you can be more creative also. And this professor was remarkable to me because he also said that design is like looking systemically to a problem. So if you have one object and you look from an angle, this is your angle. But the designer had to rotate the object and get other people angles. So like the user angle, the economic angle, the marketing angle, the customer support angle, the financial angle. So having this 3D dimension, 3D perspective is important in design. And you can be more creative when you understand the problem from many angles.
Mhm.
So this exploratory action actually helped me to have a different perspective and also to communicate with different people and help them connect. When I say that I'm a bold leader, I can say that I'm very provocative in many questions, tricky questions. Sometimes trick questions and bold decisions are not popular. Like some people can get angry because you got a decision or because you asked a question in the middle of the meeting. So it's natural that people get offended by that. But sometimes questions have to be made and decisions have to be taken. And yeah, so I think it all connects in the end. Like having these perspectives brings different angles and a different way to design.
Yeah.
But when did you become, and because, being interested in design, studying design, and I totally agree with you that, having sort of not just a sort of a narrow kind of expertise, but having sort of, this broad expertise, sort of knowing different things, because that you start understanding sort of these angles, different angles. So, but a leadership, that doesn't mean you are a natural leader. That's I know maybe that's not a different thing, but it could be quite a different thing. Not every designer is
Mm.
going to be a leader, right? So
Mm.
when did you start thinking about, or when did you start experiencing that you are also a leader?
Yeah, I think this natural leader thing is a little bit tricky because
Mm,
it seems like a gift that you are born or not with that you can't evolve, but actually you can. Most of the natural leaders we name, they had to lead to survive or because of circumstances.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand that there are many leadership profiles like introvert leaders, extrovert leaders. Sometimes people have high influence, but they are almost invisible. So leadership is in everybody, and especially in design, because I never saw a project that a design starts and then the designers, any designer, introvert, extrovert, analyze it and say, okay, let's stay the same. It's good as it is. I never saw a project in design that people are satisfied, right? That they say, yes, it's okay, check, we can move. So it's a premise in design that things will change because design is a proposition of improvement, a proposition of questioning, of change. So if you want to change something, you have to lead because lead is creating change, is pushing forward. And then you can lead in many ways. You can inspire people by an example. You can inspire people by a vision. You can inspire people by a discourse. So like it's different from managing. Managing is more controlling, more keeping things running, guaranteeing the deadlines, the budget. So the spreadsheet side of me is more connected to the managing part. So I actually, to be very honest, I know it's recorded, but I don't like managing a lot. Like the more I can automate management, I do. So evaluation, if I can automate a criteria that will evaluate, and then I can focus on important changes that I have to do, because management is almost an obligation in the thing, in the role.
Hmm.
Uh,
Why do you
obviously,
hesitate? So sorry, I would interrupt you because I was just triggered with your hesitation to say that you don't like management.
yeah, because I am a manager.
Yeah. Oh,
No, but it's
well, maybe
okay.
you're not a manager. Maybe you're a leader. I mean,
Um,
also a different way of no. It's such an interesting. It's only words,
yeah,
right? But it's interesting that you kind of go like, it's recorded, but you hesitate a little bit to say that you don't.
yeah. Probably
But
if the
it's
people I lead will hear the podcast. But it's not a problem. I also be transparent to them that I
Yeah.
automate things because if I have to do something manually 3 times, I automate.
well, you
Uh,
have to manage. I don't. I think that that's the sometimes words give you sort of maybe a sort of a negative kind of emotion, like managers or consultants is another word, by the way. But but you need to have things that work. Sometimes it just has to work.
mhm,
There's a moment of change and then So this is, you go from chaos to order, right? Everything
Yeah.
always goes from chaos to order. In chaos, you are really creative because, everything's possible and
Mhm.
you start reconnecting things. But
Mhm.
then it needs to have order. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If it
Yeah.
only chaos doesn't work, so then the whole system dies. So you need to kind of organize it. So you have both elements where you can deal with chaos as a creative, as a designer, an explorer. You go like,
Mhm.
I like all this stuff, and I like to explore, but there's nothing there yet. But then you can see things, patterns probably, and go like, oh, I can organize it and automate it and start organizing it. Now, there's also a risk of when it's too organized, it also gets too siloed and again disconnected, and the system
Yeah.
dies. So this being able to kind of shift between this, chaos and order,
Yeah.
think maybe, does that make any sense?
Yeah. I also see that sometimes managing is very boring, like repeating, and then you say,
Mm.
yes, it's predicted that we're gonna have this. And sometimes managing is challenging, or when you're doing evaluation and you have to give a not that good feedback or
Mm.
Sure.
bad news, and you have to manage change or reorg
Mhm.
things. It's challenging for sure. Sometimes it's stable, sometimes it's challenging, but there is a tendency to try to find the comfort zone in management, which is everything is in the proper box. So now I can relax as a manager. But actually, in nature, organized things are chaos and natural things are prosperity.
Yeah.
Like if you take a plant and you see how complex the leaves are there, and the plant is alive, like it's shaking, it's different sizes and all those things. But then if you take every leaf and put in an order and categorize them by color and then put them in boxes like this by the size and then take the branches and that plant will die. It's satisfying for you.
Mm-hmm.
As a human, everything is predictable. It's in a square box now.
Mhm.
It's a catalog, right? But that's not how plants live. So I also see these happening in organizations. Like sometimes the manager says, okay, now I have the team A, B, C, D. They work for the mission one. I have the team C, D, E, F. They work for the mission two. It's very satisfying to the manager to see everything in a box. But it's not necessarily the best way that company works. The most efficient way sometimes is mixed teams or
Mhm.
swarms like B does, like we attack the most important problems. So I always triggered by this when we want to organize too much. It's actually leader necessity and not the company necessity
Yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I worked for a telco many, 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 many years ago. That was one of my first sort of serious job. And I worked in internal communication, and of which I knew nothing about, by the way, but that's another story. I ended up being there. And one of the projects I was working on was, so there was the official communication, right? And then this unofficial communication, basically gossip, the things people talk about while getting coffee and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so, but they want to kind of, the ideal situation, according to my manager, was to shut that down and just only have the official information, because that was the most important thing. And so you get the posters next to the coffee machine and stuff like that. So because they felt that was a danger, that kind of the talk
It's out
amongst,
of control. It's out of
it's
control.
out of control. But I
Yeah.
learned really quickly, as observing that, also completely as an outsider. I thought, something. I think it's the other way around. I think that
Yeah.
what you feel is out of control is how the company works, because the conversations people would have was like, they needed to fix something or find a solution. Do you know someone? Oh, I know that person. And so there was no kind of, you didn't have to escalate. or
Yeah.
anything. You just went like, to this other department. You just gave, John called, Anna, and Anna knew, Jim, and Jim knew had the answer, and there was no escalation, and there was no official things going, no, so
No
that's
email.
right.
Yeah.
No
And things
email.
work. We're a community, the other people we worked as a community in that sense. And that always stuck with me, this idea of how you manage a company,
Mhm.
or how you kind of have an sort of a system that is almost like or almost, it's like an ecosystem. It
Yeah.
is connected. Like, I love the story of by the way, this is something, I don't know if you have ever visualized that, but if you do, that's going to be such a beautiful picture of the plant, the flower, all the leaves in the different boxes. And then the manager says, we have a flower. Here's a
Yeah.
flower. And you're like, I think it's going to die.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a beautiful image. I won't,
It's a good, it can trigger a good article.
Holy, or a cartoon or something like that. This is one of those, like, you bring me a flower and you get all these boxes. You're like, here you go. Here's a flower, sir. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, don't think you understand. So, right. But it's so true. It's such a beautiful visual, by the way, that which is so powerful, right? So that's
Yeah.
something that,
And I think, and I was just thinking about the gossip. So there's somebody actually within the university that's a specialized gossip researcher. And I was like, is
wow.
that a thing? And
Mhm.
she
That's
gave a
awesome.
presentation, and honestly, I kind of have this negative association with gossip, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
did you hear what Morgan did this weekend? Kind of this, this mindset. But she was talking about the organic nature of gossip. And if you're a new employee, you're like, hey, I experienced this thing. Is this normal, or what do I do in this process? Where if everything had to be coded and boxed and, put into a system, then maybe the new employee just does nothing.
Mhm.
But then it could be seen as a form of gossip, even though not how we traditionally associate it, but like, hey, I experienced this thing. What's my best process? What do I do here? And
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
there are
sure.
bad gossip and good gossip also.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but how do
There's
you deal with that?
comments that will help. And it triggered me that there is a YouTuber, he's very fun, actually turned to be a meme. Then he got some sugar and then he put in the ground and then he wait an ant to go there and check the sugar. And then he filmed this ant getting back to the nest and then telling all the other ants that there's sugar there.
Mhm.
But then he takes the sugar out. And then the ant comes with
Oh.
many ants
They'd be like,
behind.
you lied.
You're a liar, man. You waste my time, like and he is a narrator in this scene. Yeah, it's very
That's
fun.
beautiful.
So this is also gossip between ants, like, oh, I
Of
saw
course.
this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
but
pure
exactly. So
pure
that's
ants in
beautiful.
this
Yeah.
scene.
But
Yeah.
that's beautiful because that is,
It's
I
how
mean,
the system works, right?
that's
That's
how the
Yeah.
system works. Yeah. It is such an important kind of lifeblood of the system. It's how that, that's how you do these things. And as a leader, that is something you deal with, right? It's how, you talk about these connections, right? To these intersections
Mhm.
that you really need. But we live in a time where, things that's usually the biggest problem with any company, that
Yeah.
everything is so siloed. And even, I worked for companies that if one department would ask something of the other department, they had to pay each other, for instance. They would kind of, those things are,
Yeah.
for me, it was like, what do you mean, you work for the same company? That's impossible. Companies like Philips, for instance, I remember a story of Philips Design when I
Mhm.
was working for Philips Design, that they competed with outside agencies and actually they were more expensive than the outside agencies. You're like, what's happening? So that, and I think that has been one of the big problems with Philips, because somehow they're so siloed in that they all of a sudden, they started even becoming competitors.
Mhm.
And so managers would kind of use outside agencies to do their product design. And then, I know this Philips design manager, he left years ago, but he said, he would walk into a shop and he saw this crappy product and it had Philips, the brand Philips on it. He's like, where did that come from? Right. And So there's a problem with this managing things opposed to leading things and seeing things on a more organic way. You know, your point, I love the flower analogy. So this idea of it lives because there's these connections. It lives because it's an entity. It's a one organism, and it needs connections. Otherwise it just kind of, it starts separating itself and it dies.
Mhm.
And how do you deal with that as a leader? How do you tell us? Give us a trick.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would also apply design. Like design is something that you can empathize with these people to understand the system, how it works. Design is visualization, so you can map these systems, how it works, and show people, because sometimes they're not aware about how the system really works. Who are the stakeholders, the influencers, and the decision makers? And then prototype a better version, I would say,
Mm,
like, or try, experiment, hack the system a little
mm,
bit, and adapt the language. Like these are all pillars of design, like message, the language, mapping,
mm,
empathize, and prototype a new solution, a new system. And yeah, usually when I join a new company, I map the stakeholders, really map, like open a
Yeah.
Miro board and map the stakeholders. This is a good practice. And also when I start, I usually go into a role of a researcher. Like every 101, like, oh, I'm gonna know Arn today. He's a VP of whatever. And I use this as an interview, and then I get insight from Arn. It's not just a 101. It's not just a presentation. But then if you get this into a Notion or something, some tool, after doing a month of onboarding, you did 30 interviews. And then, okay, what was the insight? What did you learn in the end? What recommendation you give based on all this study? So instead of just having meetings, have interviews with stakeholders. So this is also a design approach to the problem, because then you know how to navigate, how each one express, what are the concerns, expectations. All these things are requirements, project requirements, briefing to the position you're gonna occupy, you know. And also align these people. Okay, I mapped all these demands, but we're gonna start from these two. Okay.
Hmm.
So if you don't align that expectation, everybody you talked before have all that expectations, and you're gonna fulfill just two of them, you know. So that this is, in my opinion, important, and also to set up the expectation with your team.
Yeah.
In my situation, I lead a design team. It's 19 designers now, and I have also other heads of design. I lead the B2B side, and sometimes I found myself in a situation that I had to lead up instead of lead down. Like, hey, and then I have to be honest with my team and say, hey, this month I have to do this strategic project, and I will be a little bit out. Okay, so I'm gonna cancel one-on-ones. I will prioritize this other stuff, but I will be back. Okay. If you have something, send me a chat and we can talk, but I will reduce how much I look for you and I will look upward. The same thing happened in the opposite. Like, hey, my team is passing through a crisis, or we did a reorg. I have to support them. Or, like it's evaluation time. So I can't do this project, this strategic important project, because I have to focus on my area.
Of course.
They need me now. So balancing this expectation, because it oscillates during the years, your focus, it's not stable. And that's what we were talking about. Like when it's too stable, organized, something is wrong. So,
mhm,
something is not moving fast enough. If you move fast, you break things. So when I lived in a startup world, I was the first employee of a startup, and I stayed 5 years there. So when I left, it was 1,000 people. I don't know, 500 or 1,000. And then it's an emotional roller coaster for investing in all the things. But at the same time, you leave many roles. You don't have a CFO. You have to be it.
Yeah.
You have to be the CPO at the same time. You have to report to investors. You have to do the P&L report. You have to do the pitch deck to get investment. So
mm,
you have to be all these roles. So, but you have to have focus, because you have in a very chaotic ocean, you have to prioritize one wave at time. Like you
Yeah.
don't go all in all waves at the same time. And sometimes you have to raise the sail, sometimes you put down the sail because it's too windy. Sometimes you have to be quiet, sometimes you have to be energetic. So and knowing how to navigate, I love to sail boats also, so this is another thing. So you have to navigate, and navigate is adaptation all the time.
Yeah. And how do you, well, so I think back on my previous life, I used to work in finance, and it was very, I don't want to say it was easy, but God, it was easy. I knew exactly what I had to do. I clocked in, I clocked out. Like my expectations were written on a list. That was exactly what was discussed at the monthly check-ins or whatever. And it was kind of beautiful, right? Like looking back on the chaos from where I am today versus then. But I also felt unfulfilled then, which is then why I stepped into design. But then my question for you now is, as you navigate these waves and this oscillation between these different realities, how do you maintain that sense of balance for yourself, that you either don't get swallowed by the wave or that you get pushed so far away from everything that you're kind of
Yeah.
lost?
I think that's why I automate the stable things. So the stable things I put a machine to do. Like I don't have to put my energy in stable things. So if every month I have to send a report, why don't we program auto sending report? Why do I have to build this report 1 week of the month? Like the QBR, the OKRs are routines in the product areas that are very intense, the moments that PM suffer and everybody have full agendas.
Yeah.
So why do we leave this cycle so many times? Like, can we automate part of it and focus the energy where it is very necessary to have intelligence, human intelligence? Like intelligence is not attention. So I would pay attention to the stable things, automate, but use my intelligence into things that are unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's so
Like you,
interesting.
you can have all the finance stable, and then
Yeah.
suddenly the company do the M&A with something,
Hmm.
merger and acquisition. And then will you say, okay, but I'm doing my reports? No, it's an M&A knocking in the door. Like you
Yeah.
have to rebuild all the stuff. You have to connect new employees. So you have to have that responsibility in the corner, like the minimum viable, the minimum necessary, and focus your attention in the different aspects that are coming, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, you are some, and I can imagine that your programming kind of background and your maker's background helps you understand how to automate things.
Yeah.
Right. So you are, again, you have these different worlds kind of
Mhm.
inside of you. You go like, I kind of, you can imagine automating things where other people might not even consider, never even thought about that you
Mhm.
could automate certain things
Yeah.
because that's probably your kind of right because of your background.
Yeah. I worked also as a director of product operation before.
Hmm.
So before Ball. And then that I also learned how to automate a lot, product numbers and KPIs and all these things. So I think Google Sheets is a bazooka to kill a bee.
Hmm.
Like you can send a rocket to the moon with Google Sheets, and people misuse it. Like they just fill numbers, but don't use the automations, the connection. It's much beyond
Well,
an
because
Excel,
people like me have no clue.
but it's very easy, man. It's very,
No,
it's
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 not.
it's a mental boundary.
Yeah,
Like
I know. I have a
designers don't
huge.
even look at code. Like, oh, it's code. Don't look there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a formula. It's an equation. Oh, don't look that direction.
Yeah.
So I think it's a
Yeah,
mental
but you
moment.
have something. Yeah, but that's true. That's true. And you're totally right, by the way. You're totally right. And I think when we look at sort of what's sort of in we talked about sort of the differences in generations that, like your grandfather, he kind of built his house,
Mhm.
right? And then you hire someone to build a house, etc. Like I used to have a car, which was a classic, was from the 60s, was a Volvo Amazon, beautiful. If I opened sort of the hood, I looked at the engine. If it was something was, I saw it. I knew like, oh, this is broken or something. I saw it.
Yeah.
I knew it. I knew how it worked because it was so simple. And now I have no clue. I don't even know how
Yeah.
to open the hood. So I mean, I have to go like, where's that thing again? And then doesn't, so so technology on the one hand, so that's one thing, but at the same time, technology also enables you to do other things that like the automation and the stuff. You have technology that can really help you, but you need to kind of have sort of a different kind of way of looking at it. And to your point, so kind of dive into it. You can learn. It's okay. Don't But I think we're kind of disconnected from this maker's kind of way of thinking about things. And in a way, when I hear you talk, I think you kind of, because you are a maker, and I think also, so I know I'm just sharing this with you because it's something I've been thinking about, is that what we're also seeing is that, for instance, I play music, I played in a band. Back then, when you needed to kind of, put your music out there, you had to go make a little tape recording and then go to music producer and then go, it's a whole thing. And a lot of people who would decide whether they, your
Mhm.
music. Now you can just go like, boom, it's there. You can produce it, you
Yeah.
can make it. I have a son of a friend of mine. He has a little computer. He mixes amazing music just on his little computer in his little room and puts it out there, and it has a lot of people listening to it. So you don't even need that many people anymore. Even so, for instance, this podcast,
Mhm.
I when I was working at a design firm, the first time I was working at a design firm, we would make videos, for instance, company videos, and we had a producer, we had a guy who did the light, we had a guy who did the sound, we had a guy who did the editing. There was a whole bunch of people just working on this one very simple, video, basically. Now, you don't need anyone. I have
Yeah.
everything on my little laptop. I can produce it at night while watching sort of what Trump is doing next, and so and a movie and et cetera. I can do all that myself. So you kind of, and I like that, by the way. So I like figuring things out, and I like understanding Adobe stuff, and but I'm not sure if that is something we are teaching kids nowadays. If I look at my kids, at least, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if we're teaching them that they can just go and produce. Yeah, they can be their
Yeah.
one person
I
company
think
almost.
I think there is a huge difference happening, and actually a revolution layer happening,
Hmm.
which is the no code stuff.
Mhm.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
like
You see
it's
the
getting easier and easier to
You can just
code without
talk.
coding.
You can just say, I want this. And then,
Yeah, and not even that level, but even for example, I did these spreadsheets about managing designers. Then I was giving classes about design leadership, and then my student was asking, "Hey, can you share these templates with me?" And I said, "No, it's NDA. It's from the company." Then I said, "Okay, this weekend I will do this spreadsheet and I will clean and I will give these templates." And then I decided to say, "Oh, why don't you sell these things like $9 each download?" And then in a weekend, I could create an e-commerce paying via Stripe online in a
Mhm.
server with a domain, and I launched it, and I paid some dollars to do a campaign, and then I started selling this thing, and now I sold more than 1,000 downloads, and it was in one or two weekends, like,
Wow.
Exactly.
and I'm not a professional. So look backward and see how many people you need to open a store online like 5 years ago. And the tendency is to go like web. I use it Webflow, but there are Wix and site makers, site builders today that are much smarter. And I see that the design area is still looking backward. Like, hey, I have to prototype that someone will code, and then some mobile developer will code. But there is a step that if we miss, we're gonna be behind, which
Mhm.
is you code with your mouse, with your trackpad.
Yeah.
Like this is a huge tendency that we are not looking at. Like Google Sheets is totally different from Excel, in my opinion. It's far beyond, far beyond. I like Excel because when I have like more than 50,000 lines, I use Excel. If I have less than that, I use Google Sheets because Google Sheets is connected, have tutorials for everything.
Yeah.
The formulas is translated in any language. You can interconnect spreadsheets and create systems. There is a formula called import range that you can import data from one Google Sheet to another, and then people can use together without friction. Like, so these things can make systems.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like one day I can show you the efficiency map I'm doing at Ball. It's basically a mapping of how we are doing design, how many initiatives, how many we sent to production, what was the consequence of it. So all the design operation, we did in one Excel file, one Google Sheets file with charts, all of things. It's live data. Like, do I need to hire a data analyst to do that? Or it's getting easier and easier to do charts, to do dashboards. Even Looker now was bought by Google. Like, it's much easier. It's click and play now.
Someone predicted, I was reading this on LinkedIn, I think someone predicted that between now and the next 10 years, there's going to be the first billionaire person with just a one-person company. Just,
Yeah. Yeah. There are some micro. Have you seen the trend about micro SaaS, which
yeah,
is basically one person in the company
yeah.
that
Ah,
opens a
okay.
SaaS software, a software as a service with
Mhm.
login area. We did this with WordPress some time ago, with Drupal, with all these CMS. But now it's coming back, and there are tools like Bubble, for example, that you can produce a full SaaS stable in a cloud by yourself. Really, really. So there are many layers that will
Oh
fall
man,
down.
I'm so lost. I'm going to
Yes.
be so lost. I'm going to be like my parents. Like, so like my mother-in-law, she got a new phone. And she's like, how do I, what happens when, well, why is there a red button when it's a green button and a red button. You have the red one is when you put the phone down, put the phone down. Why isn't it just one button? So I'm going to be like, there's this moment in time where you kind of lose it. And when you're, at a certain point, you kind of go like, I don't know this anymore.
No, but the thing is, you are thinking that you're gonna have to learn how to code, but actually, the machine will learn how to understand you.
Mm. Yeah, no, okay.
So
So, yeah,
that's the
no,
opposite.
no, no. This is true. This is true. But this is where my kids go, Dad, no, you don't have to don't touch it. Don't touch it. It knows you. It knows
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
What's going on?
Mhm.
No, but the thing is that, for instance, I don't know if you're right. You're probably right. Right. So, but we're also at a time where we feel, for instance, like the iPhone, right? So the iPhone was always said so intuitive, so intuitive. If
Yeah,
I, no, and actually, it's really not intuitive. It's just that you like to put a lot of time in it to learn how to work it, but it's really not that intuitive. It's just
Excel
that
is definitely not intuitive, and people put a lot of time to work on
yeah,
it.
Yeah.
right, but it's just that you are
It's
okay in
beautiful.
yeah, but you're okay in investing time in it,
Yeah,
right? So that's different. That's an emotional thing. Like, you have this
yeah,
new thing, and I like to and I spend the whole night kind of figuring this thing out,
yeah,
right? Because
Hmm.
that's not intuitive. Intuitive means that maybe this is where we're going. Maybe that's what you mean, where we go
yeah,
into a time where things are really intuitive because it actually covers, because you can use natural language
yeah,
to
Hmm.
actually get what you want and to get it to do what you want, and it uses human natural language. It's both scary, by the way, and probably a
yeah.
solution to many things.
I,
But
I read two. I read two articles about AI that really triggered me. The first one was about not having game makers anymore, in a way that
Mm.
game will be generated real time. Like, as soon as you play, you're gonna talk with the NPCs, and they will respond with an AI. And then there is no content writer, there is no programmer, and the game can
Oh,
create the path for you for your experience.
that's
So this
wild.
was boom, mind blowing.
yeah,
And the other one was quite old, even before all these AI trends. It was the name of the article. I think it was the end of CMO, the death of CMO, you know. And the theory was that the ads would be so personalized that there would be no role for someone to define one campaign to everybody, because it will be your campaign, Morgan, your
Yep.
campaign, Arn, and it will be computer generated for you. So there's no brand guide. There's no like
Wow.
Arn like
Yeah.
green, so the brand will be green to him, and Morgan likes red, so the brand will be red to her. So the level of personalization will raise so much that there will be no brand strategy for everybody that fits all. So it will be unitarian, like unit, like each person.
Yeah.
That's
So it
so,
will
and
be
then,
millions.
yeah, and it's so interesting because also when you buy a brand, you're buying into what that brand represents, right? You
Yeah.
want a luxury car because it represents XYZ, which is
Mhm.
maybe something you aspire to be, but you
Mhm.
don't feel that you're fully there yet.
Yeah.
So if a luxury car was then meeting me where I was at, I wouldn't be as interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's also really
Mm,
If you
interesting.
if you take objects very personalized, like 3D printed objects,
Yeah.
like you're gonna have your own campaign, and then you want to buy luxury. For you, luxury reminds your grandma, and then your grandma have a style, and then you ask the product will look like your grandma stuff, and you will love it. You will buy it's perfect. But
Yeah.
it's totally different for Arn, you know? So the
True. Yeah.
tendency is to be very personalized in a way
so
that we don't have to create before, like it will be created real time, and we don't have one fits all solution, you know?
Oh, yeah.
that's so interesting because that is, and so sorry, there's too many things in my head now. Going like, what would that
I
look
told you
like?
it
That's
was
kind of,
mind blowing to me.
well, it's mind blowing because it's probably, yeah, because these things are going to happen. But at the same time, there's also every movement has a counter movement. Every movement has
Mhm.
something, right? So it also means that the opposite is going to happen as well, because the people who would like that as well, because we want to belong to a group bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to be part of a
Mhm.
community. We want to kind of have a sense of belonging. And so if it's all just too overly personalized, it also means that you're kind of again totally disconnected
Mhm.
from belonging to something. But
Yeah, but
there's also,
you're gonna belong to the 3D printed washes.
yeah,
Like, but yours is yellow, her
yeah.
is blue and different.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, no, totally. I was listening to this. There was a video about music and how they kind of looked at the trends around popular music, and that popular music was starting to kind of sound alike a lot.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
less diversity in
Uniform.
music, right? It's more uniform, more uniform. In a way, this is almost the opposite, where you go like, actually, because you can do this with music too. You're gonna go like,
Yeah.
we're gonna tweak that song, according to your personal liking,
Yeah.
right? Everything can be, so it can be overly personalized. I don't know if that means that it's going to be more
And
diverse.
can I blow your mind again? One,
Yep, yes,
because
please.
you clear
Please.
one thing. Like, we are now living in a generation where we measure clicks, right?
Yeah.
So every where we click, we access. So it's still a layer between us and the computer. There are some eye tracking and some things, but we have these smartwatches all the time. We are having more sensors all the time.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the tendency is to measure emotion, right? Like,
Yeah.
and in substances in your body, chemical substances in your body. So given that we're gonna have all this personalization, and for example, you created your own music, but I can track how you feel about the music A, B, and C, and adapt the music to make you feel A, B, and C.
Mhm.
Oh, that
You
can
know?
be, oh,
So
So
complicated
yeah,
because if I
you
know,
don't even have to tell me that you liked. You
yeah.
don't even have to tell me that you hate.
yeah.
But
I
will it
can
also
turn.
tell? Will it also know that that is really annoying that it does that? And you go
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
But
Oh,
it
you're
will
gonna
be
play the
difficult.
music. You think I like that music? That's so annoying. Don't tell me what I want. It's
You
just
will
like
And
a,
it,
you will be invisible and accepted. Like the same way
yeah.
we give all the data, we're gonna give all the
yeah.
emotional data, and we're gonna receive all the media into it.
Yeah. And it
Oh,
almost takes out the entire role of curation. right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
really cool about diving into somebody else's creations, whether it's a book or a video game or a design, because you get to see some of their world through that object they created, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, hey, cool. I also really resonate with this element, or that's wild. How did you even come up with that? And then you get to pick and choose these things. So also when I do some of my writing, I go back and I read it and I can see, oh, I can see how this piece influenced me and, you know, how I'm being inspired. But if we're constantly being pumped content or objects or designs
Yeah.
based on an algorithm,
Yeah.
we're reducing our own need for curation and critical thinking almost in a way.
And imagine you go in a website and instead of measuring how many clicks you did, how long time you stayed, I measure your emotions, right?
Yeah.
How big is it? Like Google Analytics of emotions, emotion of the users, like the users that felt sad, the users that felt excited, the users that
Yeah.
felt compulsive. So all these categorize emotions. And then how can you adapt? Like, hey, if you feel sad, the campaign goes colorful. If you feel, I don't know, like in doubt, the campaign goes focused, like one call to action.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so there are many designs to be made when you create all these emotional variations.
Yeah.
But usually it will be automated. It will be
Yeah.
machine driven, you know.
And I heard the opposite, well, not the opposite, but kind of like a malicious use is that one of the algorithms, I can't remember if it was, I don't even dare say their name, they're going to track me. I can't remember if it was TikTok or Instagram, but they found that playing scary content at night prompted the people to stay on longer because they're scared. They don't want to go straight to sleep. So they're going to keep scrolling. So you see higher rates of scary content late at night.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, that's emotional. That's emotional.
And they don't have
like,
emotional trackers yet, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's weird. Oh my God. I mean, what? Yeah, sorry. That is so weird.
It was a trip.
Yeah, but I also heard that emotion will be like one of the last forefronts that AI is able to conquer. And of course they will, because it's going to take over the world. But that the more emotionally intelligent we can become as humans, the more valuable we're going to be because things will more and more become automated, but they still won't have figured out the emotional element. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's at least one thing I have of value. So
It's starting to be a very good Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We're stuck in Black Mirror episode. So, but okay. So just because all of this, you are head of product design at Bol, which is obviously, big on products, selling
yes, for
products.
anybody not in the Netherlands, that's like the Dutch Amazon. It's
yeah. And it's right. So it's huge in that sense. So everything you just said is going to apply to this company, right? And how are you preparing for that?
Yeah, actually, we are adding many things, but Ball is very, how can I say, correct with society. So we have sustainable goals, we have social delivery, we have many actions to make a better Netherlands. So Ball is very in the good side of it.
Yeah.
In the other side, we have Chinese competitors or even American competitors coming to sell stuff lower than $20. Like, yeah, get this plastic, you know. And the amazing thing is that Generation Z is not that sustainable. Like we thought, like, hey, Generation Z is much more conscient and they are more educated about this, and you know. But the real data don't show that. The real data show that they buy anything, and much more than necessary. And this is something, and we try to make valuable match between products and people, not only sales. So what we have, for example, we have many partnerships with big brands like Dyson, Sony, to make an experience of purchasing where they can see the brand story, they can understand the purpose of that, and they can buy an object that they really connect with. And not only like, oh, I searched for something, a list, I pay the cheapest one and go. So it's better to have one good object. The same thing with clothes.
Yeah.
It's better to have some good clothes than all the clothes, right?
Yeah.
So
You should
we are
talk to my
going
daughter.
we are going in the direction of quality, I would say,
Yeah.
and personalized for sure, for sure.
Okay. That's
But
good.
it's very tricky because
Yeah.
ball is not fast as TikTok, like
Sure.
as Snapchat or
Mm.
OnlyFans. All these things happening, moving consumption a lot. Like they are touching e-commerces all around the world because people are buying in social and not clicking to go from social to e-commerce. They are buying there already,
Yeah.
Okay.
and not even buying from suppliers. They are buying from influencers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, they are affiliates. The influencers are affiliates from the So there is a connection, but the tendency is to an influencer have their own products and well. So before working at Ball, I worked at Hotmart, which is a creative economy platform. So all the influencers and all the Instagrammers and people doing courses online marketing. So I navigated on this thread a lot before Ball. So I really see a tendency of going social. Yeah, for sure.
Mm. I we can so we can talk forever, but we've been talking for a long time.
It
I
does
would love,
fast.
yeah, so
Very
yeah,
fast.
yeah. So I'd love to kind of catch up with you at also another time because I think a lot of these things are so relevant for your work and what you're doing, and for sure, I would love to kind of learn more about the game you're going to be developing
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
the future.
I will
So
send you. I will send you.
yeah, yeah, you should. Yeah,
And I'm
and
Yes. Yes.
yeah, but for now, thank you so much. Blowing our minds, but also taking us to Brazil and how you grew up, and that's such a great story. That's an awesome story. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for sharing that with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anderson.
It was a very good conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me and having the time. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, thank you.